Okay, this is a shocker du jour, no question. This goes back to 2015. I was doing research on Comet 67P, and they released all the stuff, boom, 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 right, one after another. European Space Agency, it was called a Philae lander. They took samples, Kenneth and Juliet were the molecules. They did spectral analysis and all that, and I have all of that information here. I have all the chemistry, what they found, and it's all organic. They admit it. They say, yes, it was all organic, and it could have brought those building blocks to Earth. No, it was a hip joint. Here's what it was, a hip joint. I'm going to show you the details. It can't be denied. It's got the arteries, it's got the tendons, it's got the attachments, it's got everything. I can show every little detail about this. You just saw what it is. Here's what it is here. And then there's going to be a big artery that comes up through here because you got to have blood going up and down. And then there's going to have all these little fibers that attach that ball so that it can lock in. Those are tendons. And it's going to have a muscle bundle. It's got all that stuff. Because that's what it is a hip joint. I just showed you here, right there. And ours broke off right here. I can't account for this, but I can show you the evidence to support my statements. Okay, this is just not true. They're saying the water is being transported out by sublimation from the interior. Well, it is true in a manner, but that is boiling off, and that's just not water. That is basically barbecue gases that are not combusted. Just vapor from blood gassing off. All right, he's talking about is when the sun hits it, it gets hot quick. It's just like a microwave oven. You know, right? Water in direct sunlight, direct intense sunlight, which is outer space, it gets hotter than hell. So most of the water basically goes away until you can focus down in on these cavities. And he's saying that like they're seeing around the edges, when they go into the shadow, temperature drops right off. When they come out of the shadow, whoosh, right through the roof. Minimum temperature, as soon as the temperature increases, then the sublimation happens and they gas off. So this is when the temperature increases, the ice actually diminishes because it's sublimating away. Well, it's not just necessarily ice. Well, let me just show you the gases. It's not ice. It's bodily gases. And they admitted it. They said it's all organic, I think was their terminology. All right, this goes way back. The Wall Street Journal. Rosetta probe directly discovers organic molecules on a comet, 67P, which I'm showing you now. All right, if you're interested, stick around. If not, so much for that. This, my friends, is Comet 67P. You see that big smoke coming out of there? And then all these little bitty ones coming out? That is also this. This is the different angle on it. This is a hip. That is the ball up in here. And that's the stalk that comes down. And that is this piece right here. All right, I have it right over here. You see? That's what we're dealing with right here. Now, in our case, it broke right across here. Now, this is stripped to the bone. Now, let's see it with its fleshy stuff on it where we can see, because it still is on here. It's not on here, but we can see it on here. So let's go to the anatomical. Okay, so I showed you this. Now that just doesn't sit all by itself. Somehow they got exploded out of a body. That's all I can tell you. They said there was battles in the heavens, and everything I can find is biology that came through space as meteorites, comets, asteroids. I don't care what you call them. That is what we're just looking at. Now, it comes down here. There's going to be some blood feeding the muscle and up in this area or wherever it goes. There's a huge artery. So it's moving blood up through this junction here. So we know we're going to have a huge artery somewhere. Then we've got these little tendons. Tendon joins bone to whatever this other bone is. And that way there, it can rock a little bit and do this, but it's really tight and held in tight. And then you got your muscle, well, the muscle, red is muscle. The rest of this stuff is tendon. This is tough stuff. And then there's a bundle right here, which we're going to see. I mean, it's just what it is. I didn't make it. It's out there in space, and nobody can deny it's there. It's Comet 67P. I studied that just as much as they did at the European Space Agency. I followed every move they made, and they were wide open. All right, now this goes back to when they just went and landed on her. And they landed the Philae lander, which is a little spacecraft, and it just landed down there and took samples in the soils and all this kind of stuff. Now, you see that huge, remember I said coming up through this whole junction there's going to be a huge artery, and there it is. That's 500 feet across. I'm not kidding you. These things are spectacularly large. Now, all of that is the little blood vessels that have to service the slippy tendons. They're not really blood vessels. They're more of a lymph fluid, a synovial fluid. Synovial fluid means it's slippery, but it's still fluid, and it still can boil. And it points to wherever the attachment was. And there's some of attachments are like this way, and so these come right down from the stalk. Now, it depends on where the light's hitting it, because it's got to hit down where it's actually down inside of the cavity. That's why you don't see any of this stuff cooking off, because there's no real fluids here. That's the ball, and it's already been cooked off long ago. So, but these pockets are the pockets that anchor it in. And you see this little, that reached out and grabbed a hold of something in your body to hold this ball in position. You know, we need some anatomists to take a look at this. It's pretty obvious. I don't see how you can miss that. There is just no missing this. It's unmissable. It just broke down here instead of here or there. See? And now it's here. So what happens coming up from your leg, you have to have a huge artery, which we do. And then you have to service all these other little jobbers that are all over the place, these synovial fluids that are in here. So this thing can wiggle around and do all that stuff. That has to have some fluids. The artery is a different story. But it is what it is. And coming up that leg, you got to have an artery. And then, boy, I'll tell you, that thing pumps some juice out. You see that? That's the artery. It's 40 meters. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe close to 5 times 40. In my world, that's 200. So 200 meters in feet, I don't know, whatever that is, it's 700 or more feet, whatever. I'm not good at that, but it's big. And that is just shooting out juice. And the astronauts say space smells like steak. And what I'm going to show you right now is exactly the cooking gases of steak. Hydrocarbons, metals, iron, all the different states of iron. Now this is the sample they took. Now the gases would be a little different, I believe. I'm not sure whether these were the gases. I don't care. These are organic molecules, and they admit that. There's no discussion that, and it was touted as a big thing, and then they just dropped it. I think I showed you this. This goes back to Wall Street Journal. Directly discovers organic molecules on a comet. They say, oh, maybe that brought all that stuff to Earth to create life. No. The detection of these organic molecules is a major scientific success for the Philae mission, providing direct evidence of prebiotic material in comets. Biotic means living. They're saying prebiotic means it has all the bits and pieces, but it's not a living creature. It came out of a living creature. I think I've shown this extremely well, and I will. I'm going to show you more. All right, I said I could stand behind every single word I'm saying, and I can. This is a heart attack victim. These are the muscle sarcomeres, each block. They have a phosphate layer here, which is phospholipids, which are where they're slippery. And inside there is connective tissue and red clay in a block. Basically, bloody muscle is basically clay. Now, let's see what they discovered when they went to Bennu, which is, they claim it's an asteroid or a comet, whatever way you want to see it. But they went out there and took a sample of it and brought it back to Earth. Don't forget, this is heart muscle. So don't forget now, that's the heart muscle. Here's what they come back to Earth with from Bennu. They went down and they grabbed a chunk. They went down deep inside, grabbed a chunk and came back. That's heart sarcomeres. There's the phosphate layer. There's the sarcomeres, which up closer look like this. There's another layer above this, which is another phosphate layer, because every layer is coated with membrane tissue, which is made of phospholipids. So they never suspected these phospholayers. Totally took them by surprise. And these sarcomeres are inside of these layers. And if you know how to look at the rope muscle that surrounds the heart, that's it right there. Those are the ropes that would come out here, and they slice them off, and then they find this, the sarcomeres inside. And those phospholipids get on top so that thing can slide in and out. That's the nature of heart muscle. I think that's pretty obvious. It's the same stuff. Now, what does it look like on the outside when they landed? Well, here it is. I'm going to tell you right now, you get any heart surgeon, they'll look at it. There's the big round one, and it has a stalk of some sort. I haven't figured that out yet, but they lock in to the body, but not well. The plumbing at the top pops right off. This is another valve right here, and there's another one right here. Now, they just landed on there, went inside, blew all the stuff out, went down, grabbed a chunk of that muscle, and came back to Earth with it. And they know they admit exactly what it is. They say, yes, it's got all the amino acids, it's got all of the DNA characteristics, RNA, uracil, 16,000 organic molecules, I believe is what their claim is, which it's 100% organic, so whatever's there is going to be organic. And that they just came back with, well, 2 years now they've been sitting on this, and I think 2 years. It's been a long time as far as I'm concerned. They should. I told them what it was before they landed there. And here's what hearts look like. Look at this. This is Psyche. It's another heart, but it's exactly the same as Bennu. Now this still has the tendon on it, which is this tendon here. All that's gone. All right, so this was on top here, gone away. We're down looking now into the valves. The same valves that I just showed you that are on Bennu. We're going to go back and look at it again. You see it? This is it. 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 That case is closed. The only thing that came off is the plumbing at the top. And they do that because of iron banding. There's a red stripe and a blue stripe that circles the heart. And they oppose each other when they die. It pops right off. And you end up with this. And that's Psyche. That's 177 miles across. You remember I showed you that little stalk sticking up there? I believe that's where that would be. But they're anchored in to some degree, but not strong. This is Psyche. And this is the actual pictures of it. That's a tube. It's coming out. That's not a crater. The same thing with this. And these colors indicate the different colors of collagens and also the chemistry of blood. Red, yellow, and black makes up the colors of the blood. We're Mudfossil people. We know about this stuff. And that's what the heart does. It pumps, one side is red, one side is black, and there's a yellow is in there somewhere because it showed up on some of our other hearts. And I believe that's the lymph, or it might be some transitional phase between where they're, I don't know. A heart doctor would know about these things. I don't see how you can possibly dismiss this. Remember that little stalky thing on the big one? And this is another heart. Now, this is not even a mile wide, this little puppy. But the other thing is good size. Full grown, I would say. Now, this I just ran across. I don't remember seeing this when they first landed down here. I knew I could see the image before, but now they got all drawings in here. Now, this just says old recent images. Old recent images. What does that mean? Of the comet have revealed unusual terraces or strata. I've been posting about this since this happened, and I've been getting more and more vocal about it. So maybe old recent images, well, old images recently looking at it again, maybe. That's the way I'm taking it. I think that's the only way I can take this. But they do realize that's a bundle of, I believe that's muscle. It might be tendon, but I believe it's muscle, and these are absolutely tendon. And then they flare out right there at the hip. All right, as I showed you before. They come down here, and then they flare out and stop right there. And it's broken here, and all that stuff is gone. Nobody can deny this. It's just undeniable. Now, 67P, which this is, gas is off. These gases, which are the same gases that they have in barbecue smoke, except they're not combusted. All right, there's no real flame there. And this is the pits have walls up to 400 meters deep in these pits. And those pits are what holds that anchor into your body. That's how the damn thing stays stuck, because it's all grabbed into on those pits. All right. And that ball is actually inside this. This is actually this. Wrapping around the ball, which is up inside there, that could swivel up in that socket. This is, you're not going to pull that out. This has to wivel and swiggle and twist and do all the things with its tendon. But up inside, way up in here, this does not want the ball of the thigh bone. I'm sorry, the socket. All right, the socket is what was attached to this and to the ball of the thigh bone. So it does a little gooing around and moving. I mean, there's a lot of action going in a hip. You know what I'm saying? See, here's another one. They can't account for these shapes. So they say, oh, they must have broken and come back together. No. Just like the other one, there's an abrupt transition here and here. Whether this attaches probably into a bone somewhere, and this feeds off into muscle, I would think. And it's just that it's pointing out this way. It's like a drumstick, you know, a chicken leg or something. I don't know. It's certainly biology. There's no question in my mind that is biology. 100%. I mean 100%. All right, now. Here's the size of it to Raleigh, North Carolina. That's the end where basically the marrow and so forth would feed down through that bone. And this is the socket up here, and there's Raleigh, North Carolina on a very bad day. I've shown just about everything, and they're saying that they revealed unusual terraces or strata, rather like the layers of an onion, which is the layers of tissue. That's how tissues are. There's layer after layer. You want to see what tissues look like? There it is right there, my friends. That's what tissue layering looks like. And it's just, it just happens in creature biology. There's layer after layer after layer after layer, and every layer protects the layer underneath of it. And you have to have the right chemistry in all these layers to keep you from getting penetrated and invaded by who knows what. That's a whole nother side of this. You can learn a lot of biology here as well as that. Now, here you got your fingers in space, which is Umau. This is Avi Loeb talks about this as maybe being a alien spacecraft. No. This, my friends, is a finger. And that right there is the knuckle. It's opened up this way. This is an apical tuft. This strap comes down, this white strap. I'm going to focus in close. All right, you should be able to see this good. You see the white strap coming down? And then it breaks into about 1 million different little pieces. And those little tiny straps now, because this is made up of all straps. One big strap made up of a zillion little ones. Hold on one second. I have a bone here that I can show you what happens. All right. This is what happens. This is basically, let's say this was the finger. All right, this is a ham bone, I believe. Now, right there is here. And then there's another one over here. And that lets them bend like this. Now, what happens here? Why is this all scruffy looking? And how come what's going on there? Nothing. And then you got all this gooey stuff down here. What the hell is that all about? That's right there. Why? It's because this is where it breaks into 1 million different little bits and pieces. And they come through here and they lock in, they anchor from this side so that it can pull like crazy and it won't pull out of there. Every one of those little tiny holes makes a little tiny tendon ball on the back side. I call them tendon balls. They can call them anthesis, whatever they want to call them. But that tendon comes down and locks in here. That lets you do that stuff. Now, at this end, there's another anchor. And that anchor is this. Right here. It's called an apical tuft. And it sits right at the end of a fingertip. And all of these tendons come down and they anchor into this, which is the apical tuft. You see all the little holes there? There's still one ball stuck in here. This is from a giant fingertip. I have giant stuff all over the place here. So don't think, and this is in space. That thing's not small either. So that's what it's made. Now, what is this little scruffy zone here? That's called grip skin. That's the tip of the guy's finger. And it's just the heavy-duty skin. And then when that wears off, you get underneath to the fleshy stuff. It's called grip skin. And I've seen that on mine too. I have no problem. I can see that on mine. So here we got coming down. We got coming down this way. It comes down and it's broken off right there. Gone. Now, one side, though, has a vein, one side has an artery. And there they are, the vein and artery. Black is usually the vein. Now, here is the tendons that run up over the top. Those are the ones on the other side of the finger. And they run out flat as a pancake. You know, if the guy, yeah, you know, there's a, well, you see what's on. All right, if these died laying flat against like that, they would flatten right out. Because I have them flattened out. I have fingertips here. Hold on one second. Now, like I say, I have not found one single thing coming through space or that they can see in space that I can't identify. I'm not sure what, like I say, that could be a chicken leg for all I know. And where I have some other ones here, there's a, well, you saw 67P, a hip joint. You saw the finger from Avi Loeb. This one here is Kuiper belt ligament. I call it the Kuiper belt ligament. It's another, you know, that ball and that other balls. Somehow it's a ball in a socket. A lot of things rotate in your body, and they have this kind of stuff, and they have these kind of looking things. Bones have those cavities. That's a bone. Now, did this fit into this? Something like that? Because they lock in together. That's how these things work. You got one ball is like in here, and the other ball is on the other one. Maybe the other one's just gigantic and needs a big ball. I don't know. But I can tell you what, that is biology, my friends. That there is just almost no question whatsoever. All right, I'm just working on a video, and this pops up about a strange thing happening beneath North America. And this is the Psyche show. And it's, I didn't get into much, but he's talking about that we are on a craton in the Central America, and the central part of the United States. And it's fluctuating, doing this or that, whatever is going to have a problem, sounds like to me. And he said it formed. We aren't exactly sure how cratons first formed, but we know it happened billions of years ago. Well, I don't think we know much of anything for sure. So they've already got 500,000 hits on this. It's only been up a day. Now, I commented, I said, Earth is expanding. As it rots, it's rotting internally because of the heat. I said it rots from microbes that are waking up from the excess heat. Just like taking something out of the refrigerator and they're rotting. Earth is 100% biological. As it thaws out, it creates that heat and expansion. Gases, heat, pressure. I have evidence, not simple theories, and proof is on my channel, Mudfossil University. I'd like to discuss if you are willing. And I give myself an up arrow on that. And I give them an up arrow for doing their work too. And I'd love to talk to them. But they're talking about the standard, geology and uplift and crustal, this and that. I just sort of scanned through it, and I didn't see anything that made sense in the Mudfossil world, which is the real world. So I'd love to talk. I think I have the evidence to support the claims I make. All right, let's not lose the track that there's prebiotic chemistry. They think it's prebiotic, but it has sugars and nucleobases, amino acids. All of those things are on these comets and asteroids, and they think it's just, I don't know what they think anymore, because they can't just dismiss this. The Rosetta mission and the chemistry of organic species. And this goes back to 2018. By this time, they were sort of pushing it a little bit, and then people pushed back hard, and they just stopped. So you don't hear about biology in space. I'm the only one talking about it now. This is what's cool about doing research. If you do it right, you go to so many different places you never expected in the beginning. When I found the Mudfossils, I never thought I was going to find stuff in space that was Mudfossils. And I did. And I have my own collection of meteorites here. There's a little meteorite. Came through space, cooked off down to its base, which is inside of what cooked off. And I'll tell you what exactly cooked off in a minute. And I'll show you what cooked off and what is left after what cooked off. Now, I have one of these right here from Earth, which is the same thing. It's a little smaller. You see even that hook right there? You see the hook? It is absolutely the same thing, only this was terrestrial, and this came through space. And what are they? I'll talk to you in a minute about that, but this is very cool. As I showed you, everything in space that I can find is a body part. It looks like most of the flesh has been cooked off, most of them, because you're down, inside. Now, this was ISON. All right, let's see, this is not that. This is Comet ISON. Whatever that is, I don't know. This goes back to 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. I studied these all very closely. And this was This is our sun. This is basically the atmosphere of the sun. And this is where the corona starts, right out here. The sun's temperature on its surface is only 10,000 degrees. And coming out here, it's hot, but it's not hot like this. When it hits this, which is the scrub zone, where this is scrubbing through space, it reaches millions of degrees out here. This is Comet ISON. Let me see, I have other shots of this. Here's where it was coming in. This is where it was coming in. And it's coming in as a bright object, which is going to have a field in front of it. And that field is being flattened out, as you can see, because of the pushback of the sun's field. I see the same thing in our light experiments. No difference whatsoever. And as that thing kept getting closer and closer to the sun, it's starting to move in through these fields. And when it hits those very powerful jets, so it's getting really cooked. And this damn thing was close. This was skimmed the edge. It literally skimmed the edge of the corona. All it had to do was get a little here, and it might not come out. It went flying off hard. You know, it took a real hard turn. But if it's just a little more, then we got a problem. Now, the one that's coming in now is going to be interesting. 3IAtlas, it's called. And I'm looking into it right now, and it's it needs looking into, I can tell you that. All right, there's a big long write up here and a bunch of videos about interstellar object 3IAtlas. Do we want to intercept it? Well, should we send a spacecraft out to check it out? It's coming real fast, and it's faster, they say, than normal, but who knows? Now, they're talking about it's interstellar, means it came from some other solar system. Oumuamua and this other one are the only other ones that they know of, but they don't even know if it did come from another solar system. So let's not worry too much about that. But what is it made of? They're using different spectroscopy and telescopes and infrared and this, that, and other thing. And what they have found out is rich in organic compounds and silicates, suggesting a mixture of organics, silicates, carbon minerals, and a significant amount of water ice. That is biology, my friends, and you can, it's very, very, very easy to see, and I have shown it in my own meteorites, and you can find it in all of them. All of the stuff I have been showing. I think I've been showing all this stuff. All right, Comet 67P, ISON, Bennu. They went out and spent billions of dollars to do this, and they can't live with the result. It's just undeniable, and it's just avoided because it's too much for the average mind to go there, and they feel like they're going to get ridiculed, and they probably will, but the ones that are not looking should be ridiculed now. It's, you know, and everything, as far as I'm concerned, not a single thing that we can see in space is not biological. Not a single thing. So, I mean, look at them, one right after the other, right after the other, right after the other, the other, the other, the other, the other. And they're, you know, if that isn't a heart, you show this to any heart surgeon, and if they say that's not a heart, do not go to them for any kind of heart intervention. Trust me, the guy doesn't have any idea what they're doing if they can't understand what they're seeing there. It's zero. All right, you see the similarity between these two? That's because this is a finger and that's a finger called a distal phalanges. Now, this right here, I put a little moisture on there so it would stand out. You see that ball? And that strap coming out of it? That's what's in here, and that strap comes out just like this. This is where the apical tuft is. I have these in so many states of I mean, they're all over the place here. And I have the hand and the palm and everything that goes with this. This was where the fingernail was. Now, that is the anchor right there. And right off that center stalk. And I can show you that fabulously because this side was the red side. Blood exploded, and there's the anchor. There is that anchor right there exactly, and there's the stalk. You see this? That's that anchor inside, and there's the stalk. There's the anchor that's still in this one, and there's the stalk. And that's what this is, and right up here is that where the apical tuft would be. And at the bottom, you see these 3 holes? Look at this. 1, 2, the third one's missing. And this side exploded because this is the red blood side. This one's the black. You see the black? This one's red because it's the artery side. Arteries stay wet. And I drilled a hole way deep inside to get a DNA sample. Nobody tested it. When I do these, I do it right. I don't just scrape it off the surface and say, oh, this is all fine. No, absolutely not. I'm very careful about the way I do things, and I have had these things tested, and they say, oh, there's no evidence. Roger Spur's an alternative guy that has nothing to show. Well, I have everything to show. There's that exact same fingertip, but it's from Earth. And here is where the fingernail was. It's all the same stuff. Outside of your body is loaded with these keratins and kerogens and silicates and tough, grippy stuff so you don't get attacked. But once you get inside, there's the blood, and there's the blood at the top. This side didn't blow out, you see it? That's the vein side, vein. Vein didn't blow out the top, but the red is the artery, 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 and that's how it works. Comes down this side, comes back this side. And that is the same as this fingertip right here. And I have one that's 3 feet long. And it still had the fingerprints on it. And it's been DNA tested. And as I showed you, didn't I? These 3 holes. This one, and that one's blown off. One of them, where the artery was, out it went. But these 2 are obviously there, no question whatsoever. Everything adds up. There's not a thing that doesn't make sense here. If that blew out, it would be just like this one. You see inside. Okay, I showed you my evidence of what I think Bennu is, and now this is National Science Foundation, Smithsonian. They're in league with a whole batch of different institutions, academic institutions that are looking into this, trying to figure out what these things are that they came back with from Bennu. I showed you what they are. It's a heart. It's a heart sarcomeres. It has all the chemistry. There's nothing there that's a mystery. Okay, they found molecular oxygen, and then they found a whole variety of things, including water. And they claimed that it just couldn't have just happened there. It must have formed in some molecular soup cloud somewhere, and not in our solar system. Well, I disagree with that because the chemistry of the whole thing is just nothing more than biology. All right, there's 29P. They give them these numeric names, and it's outgassing from these different spots, which to me makes perfect total sense. Wherever there is going to be fluids, you're going to get gassing off. Wherever there's an emplacement that's supposed to be solid, no gas. No gas. Probably blood coming out of here, vapor, and here is going to be locked in, tendon locks, and probably on that side too. This just looks like a little, like a tinker toy to go between the 2 little blobs that's doing what they do. And it needs to be fed with some juices. I know I showed you 67P. It's got the same kind of gases. That's just how it works, because they're cooking off biological gases. Just I showed you over here, look. Same stuff. And that is no question, this is a hip joint. I mean, if you can tell me that's not a hip joint, you got a problem with your hips. That's a hip joint. Broken right there. I know I've shown you all this stuff over and over, but people just see, they lose track of it 2 minutes after you show it to them. Here it is right here. And it's gassing off like crazy as it gets roasted in the sunlight. And it's, all the astronauts, when they go out on a spacewalk, they come back in, they take their suits off, and they say, space smells like steak. Just look it up. And even God said he liked the smell of roasted meat or something like that. That's what I've been told. All right, hopefully we got some people that know a little bit about chemistry and, energies. We're starting with, I asked, can high radiation cause carbon monoxide gas to form? Which is, it says yes. High energy ionizing radiation, that's the key, ionizing. That means knocking off 1 or 2 electrons. Can cause carbon monoxide to be produced under specific conditions, like in space. It occurs through a process called radiolysis. That's breaking it up because of radio waves. The radiation interacts with and breaks apart the molecules containing carbon and oxygen, like carbon dioxide, such as carbon dioxide, or organic compounds, which almost all contain carbon dioxide in one manner or another. Now, this high ionization, totally different than not burning. All right, it's distinct from the more common source of CO, which come from the incomplete burning of fuels. Now, this is how radiation produces CO. You can read that if you want, but it's just simple. It just knocks a couple of electrons off. So instead of having CO2, it breaks that bond and it floats away. And the O2 goes somewhere else. I always show this. It's very simple to show. It's a gigantic hair follicle from what? I don't know. That right there is where the muscle attaches. This is the root. That right there is the hair papilla, those 2 dots. This right here is that sebaceous gland. And the shaft comes right up the top. And that's 2 inches wide, a hair follicle. And my other stuff is absolutely gigantic. I have a 3-foot long fingertip. Still has the fingerprints on it, and the DNA came out of it. It was tested as human, Homo sapien. That's all I can tell you. Somebody wants to test it, test it. I already did it. It cost a lot of money. It was a lot of work. It was extremely well done, and it was rejected by everybody. And they claimed, oh, there's no evidence, no evidence. I am showing you evidence coming out the wazoo, and they won't accept it because they live in a wazoo land. If you don't accept reality, when you see a bone and you say, oh no, that's just a rock. I say, wait a minute. That's a bone. It's just still got all the cartilage on it. And if you look at it, you can actually see the tiniest little piece of bone left in it. All of that stuff. And it's actually had a blood scab. And the blood's still in here. You get blood out of these things all day long. So I guess I'm going to leave it at that. But I mean, there's no. I looked up today what they think about mud fossils, and it came up. Oh, it's a urban. Wait a minute. I'll show you what they said. Hold on. I suppose I should leave it at this. This is undeniable evidence. They have this, and it's in pristine condition. Nobody's touched it. There's no contamination, and it is muscle from the sarcomeres that were in Bennu. This is Psyche, but it's the same thing. It's a heart, and they show it melted into metals because they know it's saturated with metals. Blood is virtually almost all metals, and then some fluids. Blood is 100% saturated with metals. They just did a well, not just, but they did a recent study of all the different metals in the different types of blood, the artery, the vein, and the lymph, and sorted them all. And I sent that to NASA. I sent it to Johnson Space Center, all of them. And I said, this is what you're going to find. And they did. That's what they found in here. It's the exact same chemistry that I'm talking about. And I probably did very similar concentrations. And that was like only 26 metals, but virtually all of the metals. Transition metals are the things that carry things around your body with charges. They have oxidation states, and they can carry things around and drop them off by giving up or taking on extra energy. And that's how the body works. When you die, it stops, and then it has to become stable. And sometimes they can become stable just like they were when they were in the body. Depends on the conditions that they found themselves in. Some of them, like this lung, everything drained out of the lung. And it left the collagens, the fiber, which is the sponge, basically. And then every time you breathe, goes through there and filters through the body of the lung, and then goes back out. Everything I have, I can stand behind. And I talked to you about this one here. That's a meteorite, and guess what? It's not just a meteorite, it's a body part. And that is a finger. And so is this. And they both have the same place where the blood would have been. You see that? That exploded. Because it was still wet. It was still wet when it came through space. It boiled off and exploded this whole side out, because that's where the red blood is. You see that red? That's red blood. This one died flat like this. You can see basically, you see where the fingernail is? I drilled a hole right through there to get some DNA out of there, right into the artery side, because this is the artery. That's where the artery blood is. It comes down, well, here it is right here. It comes down one side, is the artery, and then comes back up the vein. All right, these are the vein side. They don't blow out. They turn hard. And the same thing at the tip. But this one here, the tip and both sides, blew out because it's artery. It's red. Red, runny red blood. It just drips right out. And it stays wet. All right, that's the fingertip. And so is that. That's where the fingernail was on this one. Here. There's that little hook, and there's that little hook. And looking sideways, that's a distal phalanges. And look at here, down here. You see those three? That one's blown off, but these two were anchors for the tendons. You see how perfectly round that is? Those were anchors, and everything marked off. It's all the fleshy stuff burnt off down until you get down to the substance. And then this was so saturated with water, it just exploded. And that's the anchor ball and the strap. It does that. See? I got everything I said to stand behind everything I said. You know, they know what's going on. They actually mention my name. I asked what was the origin of mud fossils. And it said mud fossils have two very different meanings. Conventional to geology terms actual fossil preserved in mudstone or other sediments formed from the buried remains of once living organisms. So is my stuff. However, it is also the name of an alternative hypothesis, which is mine, promoted by some individuals, but not accepted by scientific community, that claims rocks and mountains formations are petrified remains of enormous, once living creatures. That's me. Everybody else knows that they find things in mud and they call them mud space fossils. I call mine mud fossils because they all happen at once. Now, alternative theory is mud fossil hypothesis. The theory popularized by figures like Roger Spur suggests that many rocks, even mountains, are actually fossilized bodies of once living creatures, some incredibly large, and some in space, as you have just seen. Proponents of this idea point to similarities in rock shapes petrified creatures, they just say, oh, it's pareidolia. You're just seeing things that are not there. No, I'm seeing things that are DNA tested, CAT scan, anatomy undeniable, chemistry, not a thing wrong. Scientific reception. This alternative theory is considered a fringe idea, not supported by scientific community. They won't support it. They won't look at it. That's why they don't support it. It challenges established geological explanations for the formation of rocks and geological features. Yes, and our history, and the timeline, and virtually everything you have heard. And this is the USGS mud space fossils. They're starting to understand, though, that this is my stuff now is out there, and it's starting to get somewhere. And I ran into a hell of a push against me in the beginning, and now it's softening a little bit. People are starting to understand. What I'm showing, it just is undeniable. I just can't get anybody to stand up in front of me and say, let's talk it over. Way too much evidence. Way too much evidence to just let this drop. All right, I love you all. It's time to just start talking and say, look, you people are wrong. You've been wrong. You're not taking into account the reality. How can you live with yourselves just walking around in circles, knowing that, as far as I'm concerned, they know the truth now. And if they don't, shame on them. All right, love you all.